All right, let's do this. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to another edition of the Uber Farmer. Unfortunately, still Cigar Garage Talks. I know I've been promising and hoping that I'd be outside by now for the deck to change these into Cigar Deck Talks, which are the better edition. I have to admit, it's always better when they can be the deck talks. The view is a lot better than staring at an ashtray, a beer can, and an alcohol candle that keeps going out. But we do have a special guest again, my wonderful wife. Say hello.
Hello.
Let's talk about our smoking and drinking first. What are you drinking? I'll start. Yours is easier than mine.
A bubbly.
A bubbly.
This one's the blackberry.
Blackberry bubbly.
I don't know if that's on there.
Don't set yourself on fire in that flame.
It's pretty small.
It is. We have, from the American Viking, the Dama Velada.
I can't actually see it. Yeah. Dama Velada.
Dama Velada. I always call it the Black Dahlia cigar. Because if you look at the person's face, it's got those like...
Oh, the Black Dahlia?
Black Dahlia cigar. Which was, it's unfortunate because one time I was going to order one. And I kept trying to search Black Dahlia and it was not coming up with this cigar, so... Quite good. I've had it once or twice before. This is the first time actually on this video series I've actually smoked it. We drank this before. The Sisu Stout by Upper Hand Brewery. Pretty good stout for them. It's seasonal. They don't have it all the time. I do enjoy it though. So, for tonight, we're tempting fate. This being EMS month. Nice black stout there. Good head on it. Tasty. Kicks you in the teeth. Definitely a breakfast. You could drink that for breakfast in the morning. We're tempting fate for EMS month. I've been sharing stories. The first call I ever had. Sharing stories about challenges in EMS, some reflections, all trying to cumulate with, do I renew my license in 2023? Is when my license is up. Because by the end of the month, on the 30th, if I remember correctly, it's the 31st, I will have had 20 years in EMS. So this month is dedicated to figuring out whether or not I should renew my license or if I should just walk away. So part of that comes down to the family and EMS. Not the EMS family, that's a topic for an entirely different video. Which either, depending on when I post this one, will either post before or after this video. But family and EMS, and why are we tempting fate tonight, honey, on this?
Well, I don't think it's tempting fate, but it's sometimes a matter of contention, I suppose.
So we were asked to do a class. I think we were married for what, 14 years? When we were asked to do it?
I don't know.
Yeah, it was. I think
it was several years ago.
It was several years. We've been married for 17 now. So I want to say we've been married at least 12. I think 14 years.
I think it was closer to 12.
Yeah. We were asked to actually to give a class about marriage and EMS, some pointers because, shocker, one station I worked at, me and one other individual were the only people who were on our first marriage and our only marriage. All the rest were either college kids who had many girlfriends and whatnot, or everyone else was divorced at least once.
At least one time, yeah.
At least one time. So I believe it was someone else was supposed to teach the class, but then they dropped out, so they asked me and you if we'd co-teach a class, which we've done quite a few times. And as part of the class, we talked about the struggles of being in EMS and EMS family, and it did bring up some, how do you phrase that, sore spots, contentious memories, some open, what thought to be closed wounds, but maybe were a little more open than we gave them credit for. Good news, we did talk through, we gave the class, and actually got high remarks in the class. A lot of people loved it. We got a little bit of criticism that we'd only been married 14 years, or 12 or 14, it was one or the other.
We had a baby, so it either wild and free, so it would have been 9 years, or it would have been.
We were definitely double digits.
Or it would have been 12. I want to say our double D had sat out in the hallway with a little one, patting their back and putting them to sleep.
It could be. Regardless, we did deliver the class. We had a good time during the class, but prepping for it, there definitely was some bringing up some old memories of when I first got in. And I had changed since when I first got in, but some of those memories were lasting. So, kick us off, honey. What did you think it was going to be like to be married to a paramedic before you actually married? I mean, did you even know anyone before you met me who was in?
Well, that's a tough one because, I mean, I do come from a military family, so the idea of the spouse being absent was not unusual. Like not being present for a good portion of time. I mean, my dad, not so much as I grew up, but I mean, my brother Chuck was TDY or, gone for years.
Well, we did talk about that during the class. There's a big difference between, like, when someone goes TDY and they're gone for 2 months, they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
Where, like, I was gone, but still being home. Like, when I was on call or on transfer duty, I was there, but I wasn't available. Which I know that caused a lot of problems.
Well, like even when you weren't on call and you weren't working, you were still not always available because it's always like, well, if they call, I need to go in. So.
Yep. Especially when we first got married.
A bit overcommitted at times, I would say.
Yep. Stand by. All right, we're back. Had to deal with a little child, our oldest, Vash man, got some of his wisdom teeth pulled, so he's less wise. That's actually the dentist said. I remember that.
I remember.
Pulling some wisdom out of you.
He spoke so fast, that's one of the only things I understood.
Mm-hmm. So we're just checking on him, which that's kind of fun. That's something you got to admit is a benefit of being, we're talking about kind of the downside of, I'm there, but I'm not really there, getting called in. We can go back to that if you want, but since it's on my mind. It's definitely been interesting having kids when you're with an EMS provider who get injured or sick.
How did that saying go? I'm not sure I can remember it exactly, but having an EMS parent, is it bleeding? No, you're fine. Is it bleeding? Yes. Well, get off the carpet.
Get off the carpet. That's staying.
Is that how that goes?
Pretty close. Yeah.
I can't remember.
That was pretty much a verbatim conversation we had at a party. We had, if it's someone over, they were not EMS, they weren't, I don't think they're friends of ours, and it was one of those ones where we had a bonfire and people invited other people over, and like I think it was...
I don't even think we came up with that. I think somebody else came up with it. Did they? Actually, it might have been Swedish Compass.
Right. Well, basically, like, some kid had gotten hurt. It was one of ours, obviously, and they were fine. They were just more shook than anything. And it's like, well, are you bleeding? No. Okay, we'll go play. And one of the parents was like, what if she would have said yes? Like, well, we'll get off the carpet because that stings. So that has been fun. I mean, there's been a lot of times we haven't had to go to the hospital or
a lot of times where, like, you do go to the hospital because you see something that's, I don't see. So we had our youngest fall out of a shopping cart. And for she'd gotten a bruise on her face. And I knew about it. I'd seen it. Trevor had been working. I don't think he'd even noticed. And we were shoe shopping, which, if you can imagine shoe shopping with one child who, is very picky with their feet, multiply that by, 7,000 when you're doing it with 6 kids who are picky about what goes on their feet. And, not only how it feels, but the color and how it looks and the style of shoelaces and everything else you can imagine. And, our fifth child was on the outside of the cart, jumping around, I guess.
Well, he jumped on the.
He jumped on the outside of the cart. I wasn't actually there. I was on the another part of the store. I don't know if the shoes were separated.
Yeah, well, we weren't getting shoes for the two youngest. So the youngest was in the cart. The fifth youngest was walking with me, and I went to go grab something off the shelf because the store owner was actually closing out, so everything was a good price. And so our fifth youngest jumped on the side of the cart, and like most kids does, kind of
leaned back.
And there was nothing in the cart, so that was enough to take him down. What the bruise she's talking about, there was already a bruise on one side of her head. She fell, hit a garment rack with her head on the other side, so it was a big goose egg on one, and then another bruise starting what it looked like starting on the other side.
Well, and I don't actually think she got a bruise on the one side because I don't think her head actually hit. We thought her head hit, and we never saw.
It hit.
I was on the other side of the store, and I heard a baby cry, and I'm like, uh-oh. And so I was actually making my way towards the sound of the crying because sometimes you just know it's your kid. So long story short, we end up at the hospital, and I stay in the car with 5 kids, and Dad goes in with the baby. Who is not even a year old at that point.
Nope.
It'll be happening here soon. It'll pop up on my Facebook feed if it hasn't already. And so I stay outside for something ridiculous, like 3 hours or something outside.
Well, to be fair, for that was actually quick. They got.
And so they did a CAT scan, and they did a bunch of other tests on her. And Dad comes out, and he points to what he had seen that was actually a matter of concern because a bruise popping up on the opposite side.
It's called a coup contra coup injury, where you get injury from one side and then the other side actually will show injury. So it's when the brain really sloshes around inside the head.
Yeah, so Dad had a reason to be genuinely concerned, only when he comes out and he points to the bruise, I'm like, oh yeah, she got that a couple like earlier or a couple of days ago, or it might have even been the same day earlier that day.
Just earlier that day.
And he's like, really? Like I was so worried, and I didn't have to be this worried.
Now, what's the
it was important
sad,
to be worried, but
the sad part, we were actually in this small town. The hospital, like, they don't have a pediatric intensivist. Apparently we found out, like, there's sometimes they don't have an MD in their ER. It's staffed by a PA or a...
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so she didn't actually see a doctor. She saw a PA or the nurse practitioner because they didn't have an ER doctor on those times. And it was scary for me. I don't know, it was scary, but it was infuriating. So I'm explaining the injury to the nurse. The nurse is like, oh my God, yeah, that is a sign of a closed head injury. Like, yeah. Okay, so I go talk to the doctor, and the doctor's like, okay, how do you know this? I get this a lot, actually, when I'm in healthcare settings. Like, how do you know what those words mean? Did you Google it? And I explain, well, no, here's my credentials. I've talked about a little bit on this vlog that pediatrics is one of my specialties, so I have a lot of pediatric training dealing with kids. And she looked at me and she's like, well, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and order a CAT scan because you actually have more training than I do in kids. Like, her kids was not her specialty. Because she's like, well, what would you do? I was like, she needs a scan. I'm like, I don't know what you guys got. Do you have an MRI? Do you have a CAT scan? Do you just an X-ray? I mean, she said, well, normally I don't know. I don't know if we would do that. I'm like, I think we need it. She's like, well, there's a lot of risks. There's risks. I'm like, you get more risk from talking on a cell phone than you do from an MRI or a CAT scan. And she's like, well, you know what? You have more training. It sounds like more experience with kids than I do. So we got our daughter. I think it was a CAT scan is what they gave her.
Yeah, I don't know, because I wasn't in that.
I think it was a CAT scan. But
But seeing Dad get nervous enough to take the baby to the hospital had all the older kids like, oh, okay, this is serious. And it must have still been around Lent because they all had their rosaries. Because we actually went
Yeah, you were
into
going to.
the adoration chapel at the hospital, and we said the rosary
said
like
the rosaries
3 or
there.
4 times.
Yeah.
And for 6 kids to sit quietly to say the rosary through that many times, it's pretty. I mean, our kids are pretty good about prayers and stuff, but that's a process.
That was good.
That's not easy to do. So they definitely felt that the situation was serious enough to warrant their prayers. But yeah.
Yeah, but spoiler alert, she was just fine. There was actually no sign of a concussion even.
I don't think her head actually hit.
Her
I think
head might not have. I'm pretty sure. To this day, I still swear it did.
I think the bruises that she had, because she tumbled, she was just learning to walk, so she had tumbled into the table or a chair or something on one side and bumped her face. And that's where the first bruise came from. And the second one, I'm pretty sure when I gave her a bath, it washed off. So I'm pretty sure it wasn't actually a bruise. It was like a scuff mark from something on the floor.
It was good. It was good.
Yeah.
But, of course, you want to talk about the time you actually got to see my medic face? You only got to see that a handful of times. So there is, we're trained in EMS to have a different persona. And it's fun to watch people go into it. That's one of the things I absolutely love training EMTs and paramedics, because you can have these very timid, very shy individuals who you're pretty sure would never, raise their voice to an attacking dog, and then you throw them on an EMS call, and they're very commanding. They get a deep voice. They get, tell people where to go and how to get there. And you've only seen it a handful of times. I know because we were at somewhere. Someone got hurt. We were at a party or something.
We were controlling a seizure.
Oh, yeah.
So we have a friend who had, oh my gosh, if I can remember the name of these, Saint Virus's Dance?
Saint Virus's Dance.
Okay, so she had Saint Virus's Dance, which, if you've ever seen it, they're like these mini seizures. She couldn't control them, and it's not like she always flopped on the floor. If she was laying down, she flopped around. If she was sitting, she usually remained sitting. She flopped around. But I think she could blink through them. I don't remember.
Some were very mild. They're petite mal, where it's just a quick facial.
And then some like it was her whole body, and it 100% dealt with her stress level usually at the time. So if she was very stressed out, they'd be much worse than if she was just mildly stressed. And we went into she was staying with us. Actually, she was the girlfriend of one of our good friends, and that's how we met her. She ended up becoming one of our best friends too. But she was staying with us. I don't even know why she was staying with us.
I had worked 7 straight 24-hour shifts. So I had worked a week's worth of shift, like on, off, transfer.
Because he was working at the time, or he was at the ambulance at the time.
No, he wasn't. He was there.
No, I mean he was working at the ambulance. That was his job.
Yeah, that was his job at the time. Correct. So no, there was a bunch of us who were off, and then we had some friends out of town. I was like, "Look, we're drinking. I got off on Friday. Friday day shift. I got off." And we threw a party because it was just one.
And it was summer. It was pretty warm.
Yeah,
it wasn't like hot, but it was pretty warm. Anyway, our friend comes over and he knocks on the door and he says, "What's the address?" And this is before she had been diagnosed.
So we thought it was legit.
So it seemed like legit seizures. And he comes and he knocks on our bedroom door. This is after everybody has gone to bed for the night. And I think they probably got into a fight.
Yeah.
But he knocks on the door and we were in our bedroom, and so we come out, and I go over there, and up to this point, she's been saying they happened, but nobody has been able to actually see them. And so...
worse than that, he gave the wrong address, because
he gave the wrong address.
I left my pager on, and my pager went off.
And he's like, "That's our house."
Yeah, I'm like, that's...
and
you're like, that's the wrong address.
Yes, and it was almost like the same time as he knocked on our door, the pager went off. So we go over there, and... I'm sitting next to her on the bed, and and Trevor is talking her down, like calming her down, and she's like actively like shaking and seizing to the point where she actually broke the footboard on that bed, I think.
Broke the footboard.
And she was like, she would have a seizure and then she would stop and then she'd have another one. And so I'm sitting next to her and she's freaked out that I'm sitting next to her because she was so afraid that she was going to hurt me, because I must have been pregnant for Wild and Free Wolf at the time. And we'd had problems already, so she was afraid she was going to hurt me. And I'm like, no, you're fine. You're it's going to be okay. And we kind of calmed her down, just by talking her through it. And then the ambulance arrives, and they don't know how to operate a stair chair, apparently. And so Trevor, am I allowed to say your name?
No, it's Uber Farmer.
Oh, Uber Farmer. You'll have to erase that. Uber Farmer helps her, like, calms her down, and then, like, so they've been drinking, and the ambulance crew can't operate the stair chair. They can't get her down the stairs. So Uber Farmer and our friend have to actually they're drunk. They're carrying her down the stairs into the ambulance. And I think you actually kept her in the stair chair to the ambulance, because the stair chair ended up staying at our house, I think, for a little while.
It did stay at our house.
Because they never even brought the cot in, and I don't know why.
It was a younger crew. Well, younger is a relative term. They were very inexperienced.
They were new.
Yeah, they were very new to the field. They couldn't operate the stair chair. It didn't help that this was someone they knew, so it was familiar. Plus, they were in the house of another medic who was definitely going medic voice. I was yelling at them because they were showing off their newness in full glory. I wasn't going to say that I'd been drinking, but here we are. Let's just be honest. I'd had a couple.
You had started with that, though.
No, I said it was a party. I didn't say
and
specifically.
And that we were drinking heavily. Yeah, you said that.
I didn't say heavily.
You said I was drinking.
I'm going to go back. Anyhow, so, yes, I was drinking.
So delete that stuff.
No, that's fine. It's the truth. And they were pretty violent. I had talked her down, but then the excitement of the crew coming in it all started right back up again.
And they started as you guys were carrying her in the stair chair down the stairs.
Yep.
And I think it started when they were carrying her down the stairs, and they dropped the chair, and you pushed one of them out of the way to grab the chair.
Grabbed it and picked it up.
Because she was going to tumble right out. And it's not like we had a ton of stairs. I think 4 or 5 maybe there.
I think 6. Maybe it was 5.
I think it was 5 in the house there. But it wasn't a ton of stairs, but still not a good thing when somebody's already having problems.
Yeah.
And then, did you start her IV or did they start her IV?
Let's go with no, since this is going to be public knowledge. I may have coached the medic heavily.
I don't actually remember that part, to be 100%
so we got her out to the main floor of our house. The medic was like, I want to start the IV here. I'm like, no, you just got to get going. Like, she's having seizures. They are, they're not stopped. She said, well, but what if she has a big one? I need a line. And, like, she couldn't find a vein to save her life, to save our friend's life, let alone. And at this time, like, I'm trying to stay away from the situation because, yes, I'd had a few. The EMT knew. He got close at that point. He was talking to me. He was, like, trying to find out what happened. He's like, oh, my God, dude, how drunk are you? I'm like, I've had more than one.
I don't think you were actually drunk, but
I wasn't drunk, but I had
smell it on your breath.
I'd had a couple.
Anyway, should they get her out?
I honestly don't remember. I know if one person tells the story, I started it. I know if another person tells the story, I didn't. I've started so many IVs, like there are very few that are memorable. There are a handful, but
I remember all mine you've started.
And I was in like my underwear because
I think so because you were just wearing your boxers.
Yeah, I was just wearing my boxers or maybe boxers and a shirt. I know I didn't have pants on.
You definitely had a shirt on, so I think it was your boxers and a t-shirt.
Yeah, because I think we were actually going to bed.
We were in bed when he came and pounded on the door.
I was in my boxers at the time. Well, so the medic is just freaking out.
And I don't think you had your contacts in. I think you were wearing your glasses.
I was probably wearing my glasses. The medic is just freaking out. She's like, you need to come in with us now. I'm like, I really don't. And the EMT who got it, he knew what was going on. I was like, no, he really doesn't. And the medic was like, no, he's coming. I don't think you understand. If I got to call the cops, he's coming in the back. I'm like, you call the cops, I'm definitely not coming in. And like, she didn't get it. And it was like 2 or 3 days later, when I was back at work, I explained that like, I'd been drinking. Like, I should not have been helping with the stair chair. I don't know if I did start the IV or not, honestly, at this point.
I don't honestly know that. but yeah, and like the whole like telling them what to do was pretty ridiculous.
Yeah.
But it's true that most medics do have a medic voice or an EMT,
Persona.
maybe a different voice, because there's a couple of people who I've known at the station who have one voice, and then our son, so our fifth child is just into everything, of course, but at the time he was maybe 4 or 6 months old, so he was in that whole grabbing everything and sticking stuff in his mouth. And our daughters at the time loved temporary tattoos, so they had left one of those little tiny papers on the floor, and somehow our fifth child got a hold of it and stuck it in his mouth. And so he got a scratch in the back of his throat, and he threw up, I think, and it got
He did get it out, but
he
it
got
was
it out.
blood just gushing out of his mouth.
It wasn't gushing.
It was a lot of blood.
He had
quite
some
a bit of blood.
He had a little bit of blood. So, yeah. So I got to hear the medic voice of one of our friends on the ambulance.
One of the guys I went to medic school with.
And I never heard it before, but he definitely had it when he was taking care of our fifth child, and it was kind of guys, he doesn't need to go in. Like, if you want me to take him in, I'll take him in. But if this is my child, and I'm looking at him, he's acting normal. He's acting fine. He's completely calm. Anything I'm gonna do is gonna make him more upset.
Worse.
So, and he was perfectly fine and calm. It was just really scary.
Yeah, I know that's always been. I've had even some of the friends I've had who had to treat. They're like, "You're a totally different person." Like, usually I'm very carefree.
Yeah, you're not very nice when you have your medic voice.
No, I like my medic voice. Your parents definitely do not like my medic voice. It scared the crap out
I
of me.
don't even think they remember it, quite honestly.
I know they don't, but
they don't remember it at all.
They don't remember it at all when I went.
I remember it a little bit because I was correcting you and you told me to shut up.
Sometimes.
Yeah, but yeah.
Well, they got to see. We had another really good friend who was there at that time, and he actually wrote a big letter to apologize to my in-laws because he
and they don't
many
remember
4-letter words.
They were so in panic mode, they don't remember any of it. They don't remember. I was very, very we'll say critical, because I wasn't sick. I was critical. And you performer is the one that picked me up on the ambulance. And my parents don't have a lot of lighting in the front side of their house, and I do remember a flashlight. My dad got a flashlight so you could start the first IV. And I remember, like, can we get a light on? Can we get somebody get that car out of the way? So I know that somebody, and I'm sure there was some expletives in that.
There was some expletives. It wasn't just a car. It was an effing car.
Yeah, and Dad, I think, went out and moved the car out of the way.
I think he smoked a pack of cigarettes like there and back.
It was fast. It seemed fast to me, like between me becoming alert enough that you were starting the first IV. But yeah, anyway. But they don't.
Hear me yell at nurses. I don't remember me yelling at the nurses.
I remember you yelling at the nurse that's my wife and that you were going to do whatever you needed to do.
Yeah.
I do remember most of it, oddly enough. I forgot other things after that, but I do remember that stuff. So anyway, so yes, I have heard your EMS voice.
I haven't got to use it much.
Not recently.
No, not recently. Actually, the last time I used it was when I was giving a tour of the old ambulance program, and a kid, DFO, passed out, and I got to use my EMS voice. It was kind of fun.
No, you've used it since then.
I don't know when else I've used it.
Well, you definitely used it when she fell as a cart. I'm trying to think of when else. There was another injury at our house that somebody got hurt. It actually wasn't a big deal, but at first it seemed it. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
So what was it like having, what did you, there was another spouse, what did she say, no, it wasn't a spouse, it was a friend of yours who was like, so basically you're a single mother without being a single mother.
Actually, I think it was another homeschool mom who's like, oh wow, so you're essentially a single mom without any of the benefits.
single mom, because the where
Without
I was,
the perks of having the freedom or whatever.
yeah, because where I was working, we worked 60-hour shifts in a row, and then that didn't include getting called in.
Which is actually like, it wasn't the main reason why we started to homeschool, but it was definitely one of the like
contributing.
really appreciative benefits when we started to homeschool, because when Dad was at work, then that was our school week, and then when Dad was home for 72 hours, that's when we took our weekend. So
96, but it's okay.
Huh?
96. 60,
it
96.
is totally dependent on the episode.
Right.
So when Dad was home, that became our weekend, which was convenient because if Dad's days off were Monday, Tuesday, then Monday, Tuesday were when we, we could adjust our schedule. And your schedule was pretty consistent once you got a consistent schedule.
Once I got a consistent one, it leveled
so it
out.
would, it would change once in a while, but when it did change, it changed for some time. So we could adjust our schedule to completely accommodate that, which made homeschooling nice. But it was challenging.
Now, do you want to share the story about when you were substitute teaching and they found out who your husband was?
I'm not sure I remember which one you're talking about.
When so there was, you started doing some substitute teaching.
Yep, I did.
Yep, and we call it up here the ISD. It's basically kids who have developmental delays.
Well, the intermediate school district is everywhere. I think in Michigan, I think they're all called ISDs.
They could be.
But this one is specifically for special needs.
Yeah. Well, back where I grew up, even in a couple places I've been, the ISD is where they usually have a classroom for
special needs.
Special needs, everyone from developmentally delayed to
So yeah, we had
autistic.
an emotionally impaired classroom. We had a developmental. We had a physical impairment. We had. So there were like different levels. So the little kids versus like the teenagers who had maybe Down syndrome and they were learning life skills. And
you taught a class or two there. They loved you. I think they would have brought you on as a full-time sub on it. They even talked about it.
They did.
But then you got pregnant and you were stuck with a kid who was stabby.
Yeah. I had an emotionally impaired preteen, I guess I'd call him. He was like 12.
He was like 10 or 12.
10 or 12, and he was actually really great at first, but he wouldn't do any of his work, and so the entire time you had to I would spend the entire day urging him to do 5 math problems or whatnot. He was very challenging. But when he chose to work hard, he was a good kid. He was very nice. And I want to say he was medicated, for Ritalin or something. And he went from this really healthy, really energetic, really well-balanced kid to in 18 months he had gained something ridiculous, and I didn't know this until afterwards. He gained almost 60 pounds or something. So he got really chunky, and I'm sure he was getting bullied for his weight, and so he had a lot of issues anyway.
So besides being good with kids, which that's what a lot of these kids were, this classroom had, obviously there's tons of health problems that a lot of these kids had and varying degrees of them. But I also did a lot of work with Special Olympics, so I was actually well versed in developmentally delayed and people in wheelchairs and people with seizures and individuals with Asperger's and Fifth's disease, and the list goes on, because when you work with Special Olympics, you take a lot of training.
Well, everything, and that school had everything from emotionally impaired to autism to the physical feeding tubes. And
so they always liked when I showed up, because there was one kid, I remember we treated him. He was a nonverbal sensory.
He was autistic.
He was autistic, but he was nonverbal, but he had a sensory issue where if you touch him lightly, it feels like you're stabbed with knives, but if you grab him hold tight, it feels comforting. He had a sensory processing issue.
Yeah, he had a lot of weighted blankets.
Yeah, a lot of weighted blankets. Well, there was another medic who treated this kid with a sad case. He'd also had bad seizures that you had to stop the medication. And I treated him, I got that, so I'm still talking to him like a normal human being. Well, a different medic treated him and was yelling at him and was, because he didn't understand why, he wouldn't he'd sit there for blood pressure, but if the guy tried to hold his hand, he'd freak out and start hitting him. And he communicated with these flashcards, but he kicked the aide out and wouldn't even use the flashcards and was just yelling at the kid because he thought he was deaf. Wasn't deaf, heard just fine. The kid had great hearing.
Yeah,
and he could actually process. He could understand.
He was just nonverbal.
Yeah.
He used a tablet to talk in school, too.
Yep, he used a tablet. So anyway, I think it was maybe 2 days before you subbed there.
I think it was afterwards, actually.
Well, it was definitely
I worked there for
after
a
too.
year.
Yeah, but so what happened was I picked this kid up, and I remember the teacher was even like, "Oh my God, I'm so glad it's you. I'm so glad. Like you get this kid, you get this condition. Like," and she actually I showed her how to file a formal complaint against the other medics. Like the only way they're going to learn is if you file a complaint. And so anyway. Fast forward, you went there to sub, and I think you were just nonchalantly talking, like, "Oh yeah, I hear you guys. I heard my husband, got a call here the other day. Well, hopefully the kid's doing all right." Not that I use any names or anything like that, but they're like, "Wait a minute, oh my God, it all makes sense. Yeah, you're Uper Farmer's wife, aren't you?" And you're like, "Yes, why?" And they're like, "Oh my God, we love it when he comes picks up. Like if we knew what shifts he worked, we'd wait to call 911 until." So.
Yeah, that kid was actually a really, really mellow, nice kid, and honestly,
dirty jokes too through his tablet.
Even the students I worked with that were violent and emotionally impaired, they were really great kids. It's just they had something, one problem or another, that would set them off, but most of the time they were wonderful. I loved working there. I only left because I was pregnant and my student had gotten to the point where he would stab me with his pencils, or a couple of times he threw chairs at me, and it wasn't just me. He was kind of indiscriminate. If he got mad, he'd throw chairs at anybody. But the teachers are kind of the ones that have to step in the middle and block the other kids. So. And I was the aide, so I wasn't actually responsible, and unfortunately I was a substitute aide, so I didn't get the training that a lot of the normal aides would have gotten. Had I stayed, I guess I probably would have. But I actually really enjoyed that position, but then we conceived Wild and Free, and I didn't want to put myself and I didn't want to put myself in that position where I felt unsafe at work, because it was a volatile classroom I worked in for the most part. I did continue to sub for some time after that, though, I think.
Yeah.
So.
Now we also had a lot of fun, though. Like one ambulance corps is a volunteer corps, which paid a couple bucks an hour for me to be on call. They actually paid me to sit at our grandparents, the kids' grandparents' cabin.
We spent a couple summers doing that.
Doing that, so I was making, again, nothing great, but it definitely paid for. I got ferry fee for free. So we were able to bring everyone over for free, and then we'd stay on the island for.
It was like you worked 3 days in one, and you worked 4 days in the other, and then you'd work 4 days in one and 3 days in the other. So you were technically on duty the whole time, but.
Yeah, but the whole time, the 3 summers we did that, I did a grand total of 1 call.
I was going to say 3?
No, it was 1. Maybe it was 3. Maybe,
I think it was.
No, it might have been 3. You're right. Yep.
I think it was 3, but I think you only took a patient in one.
No, I took it in at least twice.
Yeah.
Because you kind of get to know everyone's voice on the radio. That's just a thing when you can just tell who the medic is, who the EMT is, who the doctor or nurse is, just by their voice. And so they'd be all confused. I'd be calling the volunteer corps was a basic corps, so they didn't have the drugs and the monitor and yada yada yada. And for the 2 patients I remember taking in, they're giving me orders. They're like, "We'll give them this drug and this diagnostic, and if you go ahead and just start an IV," I'm like, "Love to. Sounds great. Why don't you get me a medic unit to roll it?" I'm like, "What? I don't understand. What do you mean just do it? What? What's going on?" Even the medics would show up, because the 2 calls I had, we had medics show up, and they're looking because I'm not in uniform. You notice uniform, like people don't look familiar. There was a gentleman at our church who I'll be honest, for the first month, like I'm like, he looks really familiar. I remember telling you, he looks so familiar. I don't know who he is, and then something came up in casual conversation. Like, oh yeah, he's a medic with this service. Like, oh my god, yeah, of course, yeah, duh. Like, because you just don't. We wear uniforms so much. That's how we know each other. And I remember one of the medics, he kept looking at me and looking at me. He's like, "You work for so and so, don't you?" I'm like, I do. He's like, "You're what? Why are you on a basic rig when you're a medic?" I'm like, "Cause reasons. They pay me to go chop firewood at Grandma and Grandpa's cabin." So that was always fun.
That was nice.
Well, I want to put our kids to bed. We'll come finish part 2 of this. They get part 2 here. So hang on, folks. We're taking our little pause here to go put kids to bed. We'll be right back. And we're back. Kids are in bed. Chickens are chickening. I don't know if you guys have heard the clucking in the background. They've been pretty calm, except when someone walks by them. But thus is the life of the homesteaders. So, all right, we've been talking about life being married to an EMSer for the last 17 years. We got to talk about something fun. What's the funnest part about me being an EMS? You're probably going to guess what I'm thinking in my head, but let's see what you think. What's the funnest part about my whole EMS career?
For you or
No,
for
for the family.
Well, the kids enjoy like going to the ambulance and touring the ambulance and learning about that. And I know Swedish Compass really gets a kick out of doing moulage. And it's funny because kids who are not really exposed to that like find it like actually unsettling and nauseating a little bit when it's very realistic moulage. Whereas our kids are like, oh, that's so cool. How can we make it look worse? How can we make it look more realistic? So yeah.
So where do they do a lot of moulage? That's what I'm kind of getting at. This is the fun part.
Like for Halloween? Maybe?
Halloween, yeah, Halloween. So, we gotta share that story before I get into the point I was trying to make, trying to see what like the fun part about the EMS. So, we just moved from our first house to our second house. I had kind of pulled back a little bit from EMS. I was doing a lot more education, and the place that hired me to do education for them, full-time training. My boss bought me a ton of mannequins and moulage equipment, and so we had dummies. I had one that actually sat in my car. I got pulled over once because it wasn't wearing a seatbelt, and like the officer scolded me that could, in an accident, that could still be a free-ranging object and could kill me, so I had to buckle it up. So my son, for one Halloween, he's like, "Dad, can I use your stuff?" This is Vash, man. Can I use your EMS stuff to decorate the house, decorate the garage? We're gonna hand out candy in the garage. Yeah, son, I don't care. Whatever you want to do. So he took my dummy. It had a removable chest piece. He pops out the chest piece, puts all the candy inside. As we're handing candy out. The head popped off, so he popped that off, and I think he put it in a vise or something, or hung it from the ceiling. We had arms and bloody legs that were all hanging around. But what got me in trouble, so if you've ever dealt with moulage and stuff, you can buy concentrated blood. So my boss bought me a very expensive gallon of concentrated blood. 1 gallon, I make something insane like 30 gallons of diluted blood. He used the concentrate to draw arrows on the road and on the sidewalk and splashed it all over.
I don't remember that.
Well, you remember that the kids would come and like they'd be all
out, yeah.
Yeah, they'd be very creeped out. I don't even remember. We actually we had snow on Halloween, but the next day or so it rained, and it looked like blood was seeping down the street to the point the cops actually showed up. Were driving by because they saw a bunch of blood running down the road. So yeah, a little talk there with some law enforcement. So that was a lot of fun. We have the suspension trauma skeletons.
Oh yes. Because in EMS education, so you've taught multiple classes on suspension trauma at conference, and our kids often help with the classes, even if it's like sometimes it's for 10 minutes,
Yeah,
sometimes it's longer. But usually, like, they're only there for a quick demonstration and then they take off because they really don't need to see some of the gruesome pictures that are in the presentations. So anyway, they're helping, and so one year we're decorating the house, and we have these mini skeletons. So they're maybe 6-8 inches tall,
Give or take,
each
yeah.
skeleton, and they're strung together. There's no lights included. They're just kind of fun little skeleton garland. And Swedish Compass, she's looking at them, and they're in all these weird shapes. She's like, "See, this is what happens when you have suspension trauma."
But,
She must have only been like 9 at the time, maybe younger.
but I think if you ask the kids, one of the funnest things that we've done is when I get invited to teach at conferences.
They do enjoy helping with conferences.
Plus, usually I don't get paid. That's kind of a thing. Most conferences, they give you free admission. But the couple I worked for would always give you free accommodations.
So they'd always pay for our
hotel room. The one guy I always felt bad for because he had to not only buy one hotel room, but when our family exponentially grew, he had to buy two hotel rooms.
And they would always charge him extra because they were combined.
They were combined.
They weren't. He didn't get us a suite. He would get us a room with a door in between. So it was 2 hall doors. So two doors went out to the hall, but then they had one of the joining doors, which is not as common anymore as it used to be. It used to be just a thing.
That's a dying practice.
So he would always get us one of those, and then
and then he. I give him props. I mean, he had a room that was supposed to be the green room, they'll call it, where instructors kind of like sit and talk and lounge, and it became the kid room, which actually a lot of other instructors loved. The one year we turned it into the kid room, and you had other instructors that kind of in there like, oh wow, there's a lot of kids in here. They're doing coloring and homeschooling and lessons, and like, wait a minute, we could bring our kids so that they could come hang out in this room with your kids. I'm like, well, I mean, I'm not going to stop you, but. It kind of became the kiddie center for a while, but yeah, the kids had a lot of fun with that. I'll never forget. So there was a pediatric class that was being taught, and they found out our kids were there. So they, I think it was like a 3-day long conference. On the first day, they're like, "Are your kids gonna be here the whole time?" Yeah, the whole time they're going to be here. Like, can they help with my class? I looked at the times. Like, well, actually, I'm not teaching. I'm not taking a class. Sure, they'll come in and be victims and whatnot. And it's pretty cool. They moulaged them up, and then the participants got to treat their wounds. Well, Fairy Dancer would do this like she was the best, still is the best at pretending to be dead. And like even one of the students who went through this course was like, "I'm gonna tickle you. I'm gonna tickle you. Come on, I know you're awake." And like, he actually had a pause. Like, you see on his face, like, "Oh my gosh, she actually passed out." Like,
did I make the seat collar too tight?
Is this no good way? Like, she just, like, you told her, you gotta just pretend you're sleeping, pretend you're dead, and she'd sit there and pretend she was dead. Well, so she was just got a ride out of this because seeing people's reaction. It is funny when you're pretending to be a victim to see people's reaction to your victim. Well, we had a bunch of Border Patrol agents who were being trained, and these guys are gun-ho. Very serious individuals, don't joke at all. They don't, they take their training very seriously. Well, when you're doing backboarding at that time, which we don't do backboarding anymore, you would duct tape someone's head to the board. And that's standard practice at the time. But there's controversy as do you fold the duct tape or you just put it on their skin, and a bunch of studies confirmed that you wanted the sticky adhesive on their skin. So poor Fairy Dancer, they put this duct tape on her forehead, duct taped her down, got her all secured, and I was actually helping with that station because she was our youngest at the time. I was giving them pointers, well, do this. They were doing the dumb gloves where they draw faces. I'm like, look, the kid doesn't want to hold that, use it as a distraction more, and you get their attention, you build confidence with them and kind of a connection. You don't just throw these really demented looking gloves that they blew up and whatnot. And so they're accepting it, they're taking my credit, thank you sir, yes sir, this is very good sir, thank you sir. And I hear this as one of the guys rips the duct tape off of her head. And she is doing everything she can to hold back tears because it hurt. I mean, big red mark across her forehead. She just is like, oh my gosh, fairy dancer, it's okay, come here. They're like, and like it dawns on all of them, they have made the biggest mistake of their lives, their career, she got so many cookies and hot chocolate, and they bought her pop, and they felt so bad, and they were just like, we were trained, you put the adhesive on the head, and like, I get that, but one, this is training, two, she is like 4, so no, this isn't you don't put the duct tape on my daughter's head. I didn't even notice they ducked it until I heard the telltale rip of adhesive being pulled off. She had a big red mark across her forehead. But within minutes, I think they brought her probably all the whole...
They did, but I think she refused to be backboarded ever again.
Mm-hmm.
She was like, nope, you're not doing that
Nope,
to
not
me
doing that
ever
again. Nope, that was done. I'm told.
And it's funny because the kids aren't easy on the providers. We took them to a training day for some students, and like they're making it as difficult as possible, like on the providers.
And our oldest even was like, "You're doing that wrong.
Yep.
You're doing that wrong.
Yeah, you're doing that wrong. That's gonna start to hurt me. You're doing that wrong. That's not how you do that.
That's not how you do that. That's the wrong way. My daddy teaches this, and that's not how he teaches."
Dad didn't teach this lesson, did he? My dad better not have taught this lesson because you're doing it wrong.
You're doing it wrong. He's going to yell at you. Yeah, I do laugh though. Fairy Dancer got the whole tray of cookies. She got like, I think, a gallon of hot chocolate and 3 or 4 pops because these Border Patrol guys were like, oh my God, it feels so bad. We didn't mean to hurt someone. Well, lesson learned. Unfortunately, you were correct. Yeah, you put the adhesive on the skin. It's controversial, but that is what they were trained at the time. So the kids definitely enjoy conferences. I think they kind of miss that. I haven't been to a conference because of the unknown virus of the unknown origin.
We don't talk about...
Don't say it. I'll be demonetized. I'm not monetized at all. But
we don't talk about it.
We don't talk about it. We
Anyway.
don't mention that anymore at all. I think they do miss that because they did have a lot of fun with that. They had fun with conferences and helping with classes and being guinea pigs and whatnot. I know Swedish Compass took a community first aid class that was being taught by the ambulance. And they were like, okay, when do you call? It was all about when you call 911. Like, do you call 911 if someone passes out? Oh, yeah. What if someone cuts their finger? And every kid except mine said, no, you don't call the ambulance. And mine's like, well, maybe. Like, what do you mean, maybe? Like, well, what if it's partially has a avulsion, or what if it has you're losing some numbness or paralysis, or it's down to the superficial tissue, or it goes subcutaneous or into the fatty tissue, or full dermal removal? What if you start seeing the substrate?
Cut through the bone.
You cut through the bone. Like, maybe you should call the ambulance then. And they're all like, you're Uper Farmer's daughter, aren't you? Like, most kids would not imagine or think or say or...
She was young for that class too. I think she was only 9 to be taking it, and it was a babysitting and EMT class. And so she got her CPR.
CPR.
I think she passed
and
CPR and everything at like, was she 9?
9 or 10, yeah.
Because she was young for the class, and they were all like, well, we'll see how she does the first day. And they're like, no, she's doing great. So they let her stay on in the class. And she was pretty young for it.
I got a lot of shit because I knew all the providers, of course. And they're like, yeah, we kind of figured she was your daughter early on when she was kind of telling it as it is, and not dealing with us making our few sins of omission, shall we say, or clerical errors, or misconstruing what's actually going to happen.
Was she still so blunt?
Oh yeah.
I was told that that's wrong. Don't say they're blunt. They're
No,
direct.
they're direct.
You're direct.
But they're very specific.
Like, I was told that I'm not blunt. I'm just very direct.
No.
To the point. That's a nice way of saying blunt.
Yeah, definitely. We're doing good on this one. Okay, I thought we were going a little later than we actually were, but we're doing just fine. So what is one of the hardest parts about being married to a medic, EMSer?
Well, it is very stressful. It's stressful because, like, it's all weather, all hours, all situations, so there's never, like, a safe time. It's never like, well, this will be an easy call, because you never actually know if you're, like, I will never actually know if you're going out on an easy call, or if the moment you pull in, somebody's going to pull out a knife, or somebody's, the weather's going to go awful, and you're going to be in an accident, or anything like that. So there's a lot of fear, or at least a lot of, like, worry associated with it. I would imagine not as much as with a police officer, but a lot of it's the same, and a police officer at least has their own, like, they have defensive tools, whereas, like, EMS, they go into a lot of the same situations and they don't have any of that. So I would say worry is a big one, and the, like, for a long time now, I'm not going to say it the whole time you worked on the ambulance, but definitely for the first several years, it was the ambulance comes first and family is second, maybe third, and that was just not fun.
Yeah.
That was pretty awful, like, because it would be, okay, no, we have plans. Well, no, you're not working backup, so you don't need to answer the phone. You don't need to take the call. Well, no, you're going to miss a birthday party. Not somebody else's birthday party. You're going to miss your own child's birthday party. You cannot go on backup or accept this shift or do that. So that was very frustrating and difficult.
Now you have gotten the call.
Yes, I've gotten the call twice where you were in accidents.
So put this to the end of the debate. When you get the call, do you want to hear "I'm fine, but," or "Here's what happened, but I'm fine"?
I'm fine.
I'm fine, but.
Always start with "I'm fine." Like, and that's good advice for anybody. I hit a deer. I'm fine, but everybody's okay. But if something happens when you're at work, everyone is okay. But here's what happened.
So there you go, folks. If you ever wondered, do you start off with "I've been in an ambulance accident, I'm on a backboard, but I'm fine," or do you start off with "I'm fine, but I was in an ambulance accident"?
I probably still have that recording. So I call the ambulance because you were late, or you were.
We were going to meet for lunch.
We were going to meet for lunch. And I never heard from you, and usually you get back to me. But sometimes your phone dies, weird stuff happens. So I called the station, the ambulance garage. They're not emergent phone number, of course. I call them, and his regular partner answers, and I'm like, okay, well, I haven't heard from Trevor. Now, this is precipitated by the fact that I had heard awful sirens. So I knew I probably wouldn't get to have lunch with him because I heard the sirens, so I knew he was probably on a call. But it was worse sirens than, like, normal.
More than one.
There's tons of sirens. There's more than one kind of siren, because you can tell the difference between, like, an ambulance and a police. So I can tell that there are multiple sirens. I was outside playing with the kids in Grandma and Grandpa's yard, I think.
Yep.
And so I'd heard the sirens. I knew it was like he was probably going to be on a call then. So I called the station, and his partner answers the phone, and I'm like, oh, well, hey, how's it going? And he's like, okay. And I'm like, well, I'm just trying to catch Uper Farmer. And he's like,
Well, how did he start it, though? Because that was the one where he's like, if there's anything I can do for you.
Yeah, he's like, you haven't heard? I'm like, heard what? And he's like, the hospital hasn't called you? I'm like, what? No, the hospital hasn't called me. Why would the hospital call me? Well, they'd call you unless... And I'm like, unless what? Like, I am like... By now, I'm like totally freaking out. He's like, well, if there's anything I can do, but I don't know why the hospital wouldn't have called you yet. I'm sure everything's fine though. I mean, he was up and walking around a little bit, but before. I'm like, wait, what happened? He's like, well, Trevor,
it's all right.
Uper Farmer was in an accident. And I'm like, wait, when? Like, where? And oddly enough, it was like, 3 blocks away from the house.
Yeah, only a few blocks away.
Which is why I heard the sirens so clearly, probably.
Yeah.
And someone had run into a telephone pole.
Let's be honest. I got hit into a telephone pole.
Yes,
I got ran off the road.
Got hit into a telephone pole. Anyway, And that's the worst part. That siren was so distinct that I knew it was that vehicle too.
Yeah.
So I knew it was you in it. Anyway, so I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, well, why hasn't he called me? So I'm freaking out a little bit. And I hang up, and I don't know if he called you or whatnot.
No, it really was. So what had happened on my end is I was going rapid in rapid response units. So we just sent a medic in that because there was another crew for a different ambulance that needed a medic because they had a critical patient. I was coming up, I was passing a car, and it turns out I thought they were yielding to the right. Turns out they were taking a wide right sweeping turn without a turn signal, confirmed by multiple sources. And so I made an evac maneuver, but it was a young driver, so instead of hitting the brakes, they hit the accelerator. They smashed into the side of me. They pushed me into a telephone pole and a fire hydrant. And I was hurting. I knew I was hurting. Crew shows up, and they're like, okay, we got to take you in. It was one of those good ones. Had I hit the telephone pole a little bit different, I would have been really messed up. But I was kind of messed up from the airbag and the accident. I was only going 45-ish when I got hit. And I left my jacket and all my belongings. When my jacket had my cell phone, I left it in the rig. That was pretty common what I would do. I'd leave it in the rig because, I didn't really need that stuff. And you can't really talk on your phone when you're on a call anyway. And so the medic actually was like, hey, all right, we're underway. I was backboarded. I had the IVs. I had other stuff going on. They're doing diagnostics. He's like, but it's kind of, you get a lull during the calls. He's like, we're in a lull. Why don't you call your wife? And I was like, look, I have had tons of experience with patients on backboards in head blocks trying to use a cell phone to talk to their loved one. Like, it never goes well. Like, she's gonna be so worried because I'm gonna be like, I can't really talk. It's hard to talk with the C-collar on and my head being strapped down. You can't put the phone next to your ear, so you have to put on speakerphone. And I don't know how many loved one conversations I've heard that I'm like, I should not be here. It's like, I don't want to have this conversation with my wife. I'm like, listen, we're only like 12 minutes from the hospital. You guys are rolling out, like hauling ass. So no, I'll just call her once I hit the hospital.
He didn't.
I did. I tried, but you were on the phone with the station. Like, what do you mean it's busy? So I don't know if I left a message or not.
You left a message, and here's what the message said, because it will be forever burned into my brain. Listen, I was in an accident. I can't get up to answer the phone because I'm backboarded and I can't walk across the room. So here I am thinking, oh my God, he is paralyzed. He's backboarded. He can't walk across the room. And at the end of the message, you're like, call the hospital. You can call the hospital and tell the nurse to bring me the phone. I'm like, oh my God. So here I am, worst possible message you could leave. You should say, I'm fine. I was in a minor accident. I'll call you when I can, when I get the chance. No, not I was in an accident. I can't walk across the room. I'm thinking, oh my God, he's paralyzed. What am I gonna do? Like, we've got the kids. I'll leave the kids here. I'll drive to the hospital. He'll probably have to be transported to another hospital. Like, all this stuff is going through my mind. And then he calls back, maybe.
You tried calling and the nurse didn't come in to answer because instead of
you gave me the room line,
and I couldn't answer. I'm trying to call for the nurse, and the nurse tries to get it, but she misses it, and
I think you ended up calling me back.
I think I called. No, you called the main line, and then they transferred you to my room instead of just like realizing I couldn't get up. I was strapped down to a backboard, and like I was actually kind of mad at the receptionist because I was like, dude, I can't get up. Like, so send the nurse to answer the freaking phone.
Anyway. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to come to the hospital. I'll be there in a little bit. No, there's no reason to come to the hospital. I'm like, you are not able to walk across the room, but you don't want me to come to the hospital. So in my head, I'm thinking, what a jerk you are, right? And I'm like, are you, like, you're an idiot. Like, you're an idiot right now. And so anyway, I'm like, no, I'm coming to the hospital. And he argued with me. So I ended up like, I don't know, I guess I don't go to the hospital. So you had to hitch a ride back, which was dumb. Like, I was willing to come get you, but whatever, stay there. So then he had to hitch a ride back, which made it even worse because now I had already gone home, so I had all the kids at home, and then I had to reload them back into the car where I could have left them with Grandma and Grandpa. I had to reload them back in the car, drive to the ambulance garage because you couldn't drive your car home.
I could drive I drove my car.
No, you didn't.
Yeah, I drove my car.
No, you did not drive home.
I did too. I drove home.
Did not.
No,
Anyway.
I was still on duty because they were like, well, you were cleared, so you might as well stay on duty.
I don't think you stayed on duty
I
that
think I
night.
stayed on duty that day.
Anyway, it was dumbest way to say something. Tell people, I am fine. Those are the first 3 words that should be out of your mouth. If you're with others, we are fine. First 3 words. If you get into an accident, if you have a problem, always start with we are fine, as long as it's true. Always begin with we're fine.
Good times. So,
Think as an EMS person, you know that.
well, like I said, I've had that phone call. I've had patients make the phone call, and
Worst possible way.
right. So, all right. In the last few minutes of the video here, give me your 2 cents. Do I renew?
Do you renew your license?
Renew my license in 2013 or 2023? Do I renew my license? What are your feelings on this matter?
Oh, see, I don't even like this question.
You don't have to. That's why we're.
I don't know.
You know.
6 months ago, it would have been, yeah, of course, just renew it because you like it and it'd be good to have it and volunteering and whatever. But now with the current geopolitical climate, I'm like, do you really need a reason to be drafted? Do you really want to add that?
Right, that little extra responsibility. And,
That little extra, like, here, this makes me even more qualified.
well, to be honest, I've been working from home with my current job, and you guys have kind of gotten addicted to that.
It is nice to have you working.
Addicted to
from
having
home.
Dad have more stable hours and stable times, and so are you leaning more towards not renewing, or?
I don't know. Like I said, 6 months ago would have been a no-brainer. Yeah, you probably should renew because even if you renew and you don't use it on an ambulance, it's not like it goes bad, all right? But if you don't renew, then you have a long process to get it back. So I mean, renewing is not a bad thing. But again, 6 months ago. Now I'm like, I don't know what the current geopolitical climate.
So people know it's the process. Actually, if I don't renew, if I lapse, I essentially have to take the medic class over again.
Mm-hmm.
I have to completely redo my medic. That's another 2 years, 18 months to 2 years doing the whole medic class, even though I'm very.
You can't clip out of that. So.
Can't clip out. You have to just redo the entire thing. You have 90 days after your license expires, but if it go out past that 90 days, you must redo your entire license all over again. So that's what makes this a little tricky. Like nursing, you can let your license lapse, and then you can just clept out. You can take a test, or you can get continuing ed up to like 10 years after your license expires.
Again, like I said, I like even 6 months ago it would have been a no-brainer. Just re-up it. Like it doesn't hurt you to re-up it. It's not hard. It's some continuing ed that you normally keep up with anyway, and that's it. So why let it lapse when you might want to use it anytime in the next year? Or the current geopolitical climate, that's a little less like, do you really want an extra certification that makes you more like battlefield ready? So
So currently, we said 6. So, but currently, right now, you're thinking no.
Currently, right now, I don't know, because I'd hate to base that kind of decision on just the current geopolitical climate and be like, no, definitely not, because there's a small chance or there's a chance, because there's 100% chance that if you don't renew it, then if you do want it back, you have to go through everything again. So. I mean, not that I worry about you taking the test again, because we've already been down that road. So, I mean,
It would just be 2 years of my life. I'd have to go back to classes and have to actually tell the instructor what they're teaching wrong.
I'm just saying,
Okay, well, So, but you're leaning more towards no. And we'll see what
again,
happens.
I don't know.
We got a few months.
The
and
geopolitical climate is scary. So.
It's scary.
And now you're like, I didn't think of it that way.
I did not. No, this was good intel. Good squishy. Good squishy.
Sorry.
No, this is what this whole month is about. This month of May is going through.
It's kind of off in the nethers of my brain. Like it's off on the side. It's not like one of my main components there. So, but it's kind of a So anyway.
Okay. Well, we'll leave it there. So it's not a yes, but it's what I was a few years ago said it's not bad idea. It's not a bad idea. It's not a good idea, but
Well,
it's not a bad idea.
Again, I think it's smarter to re-up it, like because it doesn't hurt to re-up it. It's not super expensive to re-up it. It doesn't it's not challenging. It's not.
Yeah.
So keeping it up to date is really just smart practice. But again.
Yeah, because I've helped some guys within actually a 3-month extension. I've had many guys I get taught enough credits for them so they can re-up their license. It doesn't take a ton of work. I mean, it's no fun to do whatever it is, 90 hours or 45 hours.
I thought it was
classes.
30. Correct.
No, it's 45.
But I mean, yeah. So
45 for the state license, 90 for or 120. Whatever for the national license.
I don't actually know anyone. Yeah. That's my thought on it.
Okay.
Like 100%, I know you like it, and like even if you choose not to go back, I think you would regret letting it lapse in one way or another. But at the same time, and it's easier to re-up it than it is to
re-get it.
To get it again. So.
All right. Well, I'm willing to leave that here. We'll, more to think about, more to come in May. Like I said, we're gonna finally call the ball at the end of May. That's what I'm giving myself at the end of May to decide whether or not I'm gonna pursue it or not. So we'll leave it there. So leave your comments. What do you think? What do you think? Should I re-up it or not? That's gonna be the trend here, kind of going forward as we share different stories and experiences with EMS. It's an EMS heavy month for the e-performer. So anyway, hope everyone's having a good one. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you on the next one.